Mr. Presley has also notified me that the bids for the rec center were due last week, and we have, as typical in these days and times, only received one. We're going to open that later on this morning. And then Mr. Brown asked me to, if he could speak for a few minutes before we started our discussion. So, Commissioner Brown, it's for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to make a few comments on building of this budget. I've been involved in 4 of them in the past. When you're elected, you don't get to build that budget because you just take over the day after the election and the budget has already been completed then. So I've had 4 years of experience of this, but I'd like to ask my colleagues and Danny to consider several things as we go through this budget process and then approve it. One of the things is we've been very blessed with a couple of windfalls that we've never had before in Holiday Island that I remember 16 years here. One was the $173,000 in the auction that we had. And once again, I want to thank Danny for doing that. I was thinking maybe we'd have 10 or 20, $173,000. We had a lot of junk that became treasures to a lot of people. And maybe we could do that about every 2 or 3 years and weed out a lot of junk and make them into treasures for our budget. But I'd like to see that amount of money used for a specific purpose, and that might be the PRV valves. We've had the engineer report here a month or so ago. We've been discussing this for several years. Mayor Dan, when he was a BOC member, did great work on that planning. And if our folks can't do it, which I'm told maybe they can't with the other work that they have to do, maybe we could use this as a special fund for special projects, that being one, or water in general. The other blessing we had was the sale of the land below the tower for $625,000, and I would like to see that used for the next several years for special projects that we have not been able to fund as a regular budget. That's a lot of money. That's well over 10% of our 22 budget, that amount of money. I would not like to see it go totally to the rec center. I think we've had some money budgeted for the rec center building already, but we need to have a fund that we don't have to go out and borrow from a bank for large outlay projects. The third thing I'd like to really consider, and that is salary and wages for our employees. And Mr. Dyer last week said something that I agree with him, and that is that we really need to take care of our employees. We have 50-some, I think, in Holiday Island on HISED, and for several years they got no raise whatsoever. So last year we gave 3% to everybody, more of a cost of living raise. But I'm opposed to that in that if you're making $60,000, you're going to get an $1,800 raise, and if you're making $13 an hour, well, you do the math. There should be some way. I also would like to reward sustained performance, great performance. I worked overseas for the federal government, and we were involved in a project like that, and it really sort of made you want to work as hard as you could and develop your skills in order to earn a little more money. And the last thing I would say is we need to keep up our buildings very well. The rec center is an example of a very, very costly maintenance problem. We could have prevented that. It could have been prevented. There was leaks in there and so forth and so on. You all know the problems. But now we're spending several $100,000 that could have been prevented by maintenance. And the other one that I was just involved in, which is not a big deal, but we took away some bad wood and put up new wood and painted it in a very nice project. So, Madam Chair, that's all I had. Thank you for letting me say that.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Commissioners, anyone else have any comments?
I think that the site money should be, we should take a long, hard look at the dechlorination of the sewer treatment plant. those funds. That's a pretty big ticket.
I have a question. It was my understanding that the proceeds from the auction were reallocated to the department that sold the goods, is that correct? I mean, if it was water department equipment, did it go back to the water department?
No, ma'am, that money is just going to be in
Okay.
an account.
Okay.
And my recommendation to the board is that we take that plus the proceeds from the cell tower transaction, combine those together, which is roughly $798,000, and put that into an account together. And we can call that, we understand that's a windfall for us, a capital projects account or something of that nature, so we can, I understand how important it is to track exactly where that money went.
Other comments? Mr. President, we're going to turn it over to you to start our discussion on the 2023 budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the board is aware, I sent revenue projections to you last week. Revenue is essentially flat. Our revenue is somewhere around 4.9 million. And based on my projections, it's going to dip slightly. I think around $100,000 or less from what it was in 2020, what I predicted to be in 2022. So in 2023, dealing with the same amount of revenue.
Do you mind explaining to the audience how you worked up
Sure.
those numbers?
Sure.
We know, but we can tell them.
We have an Excel spreadsheet that goes back to 2017. Now, I don't know what they did prior to that, but we have the revenue numbers from 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and then in 2022, we have the revenue through the end of August. And so we use those numbers to calculate what we predict for this current year, how we're going to finish the year. Then we go back and we have enough data there to look at a 5-year or even a 6-year trend. Understand that, COVID hit and there's, obviously that changed the economy and it changed our revenue. But I think we're kind of at a point where we can take all of the numbers from 2017 through 2022 and average that, plus taking a look at how we think we're going to finish this year and be pretty close on our revenue projections. And that includes all revenue sources, including the AOBs, the marina, the restaurant, the golf courses, the recreation center, and all other sources. So that's step number one in preparing for this budget, is to go back and look at those revenue trends and make those forecasts.
Thank you.
Sure. So after doing that, as I said, I think we're going to be pretty flat. The revenue from 22 to 23. And then we start building the budget. So what we have done to this point is we spent all day Thursday and all day Friday meeting with each department head. We vet through their budget. As you can see on this Excel spreadsheet on the screen here, along the bottom there are tabs. I don't know what the sheet 1, 2, and 3, and 4 is, but that may be something that the accountant is using for worksheets to do her formulas and whatnot. But then you'll see the next tab going to the right is administration. And then there's, follow along with me, Cheryl, and thank you for doing that. General fund. Water and roads, and let's pause here. As you can see, under this tabs entitled roads, there's operations and maintenance, dues and fees, equipment purchases, fuel, and then all the way down. That's everything that it takes to run the roads department. And so when we do this budget, we don't just carry over the numbers from last year. it's almost like zero-based budgeting. You go back and you have a conversation on each one of those line items. What's happening with the economy? Well, we know that fuel is going up. Well, it peaked in 2022. It's coming back down. And also what we're doing as we populate these numbers in, for example, column H, which are the 2023 numbers, we're looking at trends on how we're going to finish 2022. If we are, you see that fuel was $20,000 for 2022.
Excuse me, could you make that bigger since the columns don't go out for the full page? Oh, boy, I can read that.
How's that?
No, ma'am.
A little bigger.
There.
One more time? Oh, there.
Good.
That's nice.
Okay.
Thank you.
So fuel was $20,000 for 2022. We have the numbers through the end of August, and we can look at those and kind of project that we're going to finish the year at $18,000. We expect fuel to stay flat or maybe drop a little bit in 2023. I mean, who knows? If we had a crystal ball, we could be much more accurate on all of this. So if we don't need $20,000 for fuel for the roads department, then we back that down to $18,000 for the next year. And so we do that for each one of these items for each department. Now, let's continue going on the tabs, going to the right. Fire department. There's fire, and then that is restaurant and meeting areas. We've kind of changed the title on that because the restaurant is inherently tied to the meeting rooms that are downstairs and the ballroom, because the restaurant serves the ballroom. It's the same supplies, the same personnel, the same food, so forth. So those are tied together. You have golf. What is that? Golf maintenance. Okay. You can see the price of chemicals there. $75,000 to a $5,000 increase to $80,000 because we're seeing that chemicals are increasing. Fuel is up a little bit for next year. That's because we are on track to exceed $23,000 in the current year. So we up that a little bit. Now let's go all the way over to the right, Cheryl, on those tabs. So we finish out these tabs with CIP. Would you click on that? Those are capital improvement projects, and there's a list there of those projects that are proposed for 2023. And that's something that we'll be discussing later on in the day. And you know, there's a lot of decisions to make because there's a lot of capital improvement needs. In fact, there are more needs than there are funds to support those projects. So the board will have to make those decisions. But this is all the result of lengthy hours on end in here with the department heads and talking about what do they need, where can they cut costs, how do we take care of our facilities, our infrastructure. And obviously, personnel, we have some vacancies. We want to try to provide a COLA of some sort for our employees because consumer price index is approaching 9%. And we're not going to be able to give a 9% raise, but we want to try to help our employees. We have some fantastic, dedicated employees who, some of whom are struggling in this economy. So that's kind of an overview of how we got to where we are now in populating these worksheets for 2023 to present to the board. And commissioners, what I have provided you there is the 2022 final approved budget. That's the summary page. And then we have the 23 budget summary page, so that you can sort of compare those two side by side and see what the difference is. Something I would like to point out You'll take a look at the page entitled 22 Budget Final Approved. Everybody with me on that page? Okay, on that page, you'll see that the net at the bottom right is 154,000. That is after we went through the CIP, and I think you'll remember that exercise that we did last year. We went through CIP and we took out some things and we kept in some things, and we kept back 154,000 to go towards the recreation center. And so if you move over to 2023 and you look at the capital expenditures, you'll see another long list there that we will have to work through. If you see at the bottom right, the net shows a deficit of $545,000 for 23. That is under the assumption that we leave all that CIP in there, we're going to come up $545,000 short. So we will be back to where we were last year and working through the capital and setting priorities to where we get that number to balance.
Danny?
Yes, sir.
It says here approved 2022, and then to the right of that is proposed 2022. Would that be 2023? Is that my looking at it wrong? Oh, I see. 2023 is the third column.
Yeah, that's not.
Okay.
I saw that too.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh, you're looking at the
you're looking at
CIP
the-
list?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm on your own. Okay. You're going to get to CIP in a little bit after a while?
Well, that list that has the two pink columns right
Yeah.
in the middle of the page, that
Yeah.
is the CIP spreadsheet.
So you got zeros on there. Zeros.
But when we look at the 2023 budget summary, that does not include any cost of living increase at this point in time, correct?
That is correct. And on the revenue side of things, this does not, the information that you're seeing here on any of these pages does not include the cell phone tower revenue and the revenue from the surplus property auction. And that is $798,000 that is not reflected on this spreadsheet.
Plus the money that we've accrued over the last several years in our operating capital that is almost $1 million above where it was
That's correct.
4 or 5 years ago.
That's correct.
Madam Chair, I'm a little confused because what Danny just mentioned is 700 and some thousand, the two project funds put together. And then earlier he mentioned that some of the capital improvement projects would be paid for by those funds. Did I hear that wrong?
I think that's up to the board as to what they want to spend those dollars on, but it could be some of the capital improvement projects, correct?
Okay.
It's 22.
Let's just take an example, and it's not a good example, but let's say we needed a new roof on this building, and it was $40,000. Let's just pick out some numbers. And we don't have that in our budget currently, but all of a sudden we get some leaks here and we need to replace that. Is that $40,000 we could use from that special fund budget?
Well, I think you can look at the water well that went down on the island. That wasn't funded. But that's one of the reasons that you keep extra money back is so that you can do those kind of things. That's where we found the $100,000 for that. You know, a budget to me is a map, a roadmap of where we're going to go.
Right.
But as the year goes along, there's going to be things that happen that are unexpected. There are going to be things that we thought we needed to do that aren't. You remember we allocated money last year for the ponds, reworking the ponds, and then they got to looking at it and decided that they could do that in-house,
Right.
and it didn't need to be funded. So, to me, this is just sort of a roadmap. Which direction are we going to go?
Well, one of the things I forgot to mention in my first comments, and really important, and that's the chat building for holding chat, which is covered. We had that 2 years ago in our budget for $77,000, and the road department manager and the district manager decided they didn't need it. And then in January, we had a terrible ice storm, February, and we had 6 cars in the ditch by Fire Station 1. I saw a lady do a double flip and hit her head on the ice, and the 2 vehicles that spread chat were inoperative because of large chunks of ice. So we need to look at that, and it's not on here, but we really need to look at that. And I don't know if it would cost $77,000, but wouldn't that be one of the things we could pay for out of that $729 or $792?
Well, I think it is, but I think it's important that we look at what the department managers are requesting, because they're the ones that know their needs the most.
Well, they
And know the
requested it
capabilities.
2 years ago, and then it was taken out. They said we didn't need it. And the tragedy of that ice storm, we're lucky somebody didn't get killed there, because I was up there directing traffic, trying to help out at the Grace Lutheran Church and not letting people go down there. If we have another one of those, we could have, our fire trucks couldn't get through, our ambulances can't get through. The wreckers were 4 hours behind to pull people out of the ditch. We called for some help from the Carroll County Sheriff. They said, no, we have nobody to send you. It was a Saturday, I believe. It was a mess, and now we're looking at it, we're not even looking at it in this budget, and for sure we're gonna have an ice storm. We all know that, living in Arkansas.
Cheryl, can you click over to CIP, please?
And as I recall, the last conversation we had about the chat situation, the former road superintendent said that he felt it was no longer needed to build that structure, that they could cover the chat with tarps.
Well, then he also said, I think it was in a meeting in this room, that he had one fellow out there with a pickaxe in the back of the pickup truck hitting the big chunks of ice so that they could go through the spreader. So we're hearing 2 different stories about it.
Down to roads.
I'm sorry, I'm confused.
Up near the top.
I've got a
about
budget.
4 down from admin.
I've got a budget here that says it's 10/3/22. Then I've got one here that says it is November 2021.
That's when the 22 was approved.
This is the current year budget. The one that says November 2021, that's this year's budget.
2021 is this year's budget?
It was approved in 2021.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
That's this year's budget.
That's
And this is,
2022.
right, and then this one that has October the 3rd, 2022 is the one we're working on for next year's budget.
Okay.
Do you want to go through, since I brought up the fact that the department managers have made requests, would it be appropriate to look at
Sure.
that now, or?
Sure. We
Maybe we should,
could hit the highlights of that. I could kind of, if the board would like, I can kind of walk you through what occurred on Thursday and Friday, meeting with all the department heads. And Cheryl, I believe the reason that looks like that is there's a slider bar near the bottom. If you'll slide that over, there you go. Now you can see what's listed there. Now, that storage building for sand and chat, Commissioner Brown, that is listed there
Okay,
at 70,000.
thank you.
Yes,
I
sir.
didn't see that. Apologize.
That's okay. It's, in some of these, the way she was working with it, some of these panes were frozen, so we have to kind of slide to be able to see the headers or the labels to the right or left.
Mhm.
So Cheryl, can you go on the tabs at the bottom, all the way to the left to administration? And I can kind of walk you through this. You'll notice on each one of these departments, there is, you want to blow that up just a little bit?
Sorry, I'm only clicking one at a time. I don't know why
I can see that.
it's very
It's
difficult to.
Very touchy.
There's over at the side, there should be something where you can type in a number. See a little box there? No? I think it's to the other side.
This shows where I am, 136.
Yeah, you can click in that box and put in 140 or whatever number you want, and hit enter.
Well, when I click on that number,
I see that little box that says custom, and it has a little box there.
I'm sorry, I don't. Am I still looking at?
Right in the middle of the page, there's a
Oh,
little
duh.
box that came up, and
Okay.
it says custom.
Okay.
Click on that box there, and you can put whatever number you want in there.
That's good. Good.
I think she forgot to populate this page, but we'll have to work off it.
Okay.
So,
The mouse is not.
okay. Can you scroll up to the top? There we go. So there's income for administration. And essentially, that is the rental to the city for that office is $18,000. Credit card fees is what we have to pay the bank for credit card transactions. Well, we pay the bank and then we receive that money back. So it's a wash, basically. But $21,000 in revenue. And if you scroll down to wages, just to eliminate any confusion, the wages that you're seeing there is 2022 in column E, 2023 in column G. And you can see that there was roughly a $6,000 increase on wages and
Which is mostly due to health insurance.
health insurance, and I don't know about the FICA, Social Security, some of those other federal things that we pay in, and retirement. So not much change there. And then if you go down to operations and maintenance, audit fees, our auditors are costing us a little more this year. I don't know why, for whatever reason that, we have to have an audit. It's been done by Landmark for many years, and their cost has gone up a little bit more this year. Our costs, there are more people using credit cards to pay like AOBs and other things, so you can see an increase there. Dues and fees, equipment purchases, we reduced by $2,500. Looked like we weren't going to spend as much as we projected. Notices and ads. Generally, notices and ads are for, if we do public notice for the elections, things like that, that we're required to do by law, and also when we place ads for vacancies, have open vacancies. And that notices and ads is also in every other department for their vacancies. Postage was moved to the general fund because administration, we mail out things for all departments. It all comes through here. The postage machine is located in this office, but we've separated those costs out. Purchase services, that is primarily the increase in, purchase services means contracts. When essentially if we have a contract with someone to provide a service for HICID, it goes into purchase services. There's been an increase primarily in the HVAC systems. We have numerous HVAC systems throughout the district, and we have a contract to have those things serviced a couple of times a year, replace filters, recharge Freon, and different things. So that has gone up. And I don't really see anything else there. Utilities has gone up. We project by about $1,500. We're probably going to go over the $8,000 that was budgeted for this year.
The purchase services, is that where the accountant's contract is?
That's correct, yes. and pest control, when they come and spray our buildings, that contract is also in there. So you can go to general fund. Cheryl? Okay, let's start at the top here. Debt service. When the AOB bills are paid, there's a portion of that goes towards debt service for the wastewater treatment plant. So that's what that is. We pay that debt. Current assessment income.
Danny,
A slight increase.
do you know when the bond will be paid off for the plant?
Unless we pay it early, it would be in like 2031, I believe. That debt, and by the way, I got an open records request today asking why it's taken 40 years to pay off the debt on the wastewater treatment plant. That debt was not issued, the bonds were not issued until 2012, so I don't know where that person got their information, but it's been 10 years that we've been paying on the wastewater treatment plant.
All bonds are usually issued for a 20-year period.
Current assessment income. This is a projection that we will receive $2.4 million in AOB revenue in 2023. But we have done a little research, and over the last 3 years, we've collected about 85% of what we billed. So, 15% of those people have defaulted on their AOBs. So, and we understand that, and we budget accordingly.
Would that primarily be unimproved lots that people acquire?
That's correct.
Try to sell quick and then
Correct.
walk away
Now,
from?
we have seen a few that are improved lots where there's actually a house there, but that's generally not the case.
But I guess the reason I asked that question, I don't want anybody to get the impression that we're foreclosing on lots of people's homes.
That's very rare.
Yeah.
It's usually vacant lots. Penalties, as you know, if AOBs are not paid by a certain deadline, there's a penalty added, and that's what you're seeing there. Miscellaneous income. I do not recall off the top of my head what that miscellaneous income is. The interest income is from our investments, our CDs, and money market account. It's not making much, but there's a little bit there. So a little bit of uptick in revenue by $91,000. So we can scroll down a little bit to operations and maintenance. There's the uncollectible assessment expense, $80,000, we understand. So we show that as an expense because we have to write that off at some point. And that represents the 15% that is uncollected. Insurance is very expensive. We're going to see a substantial increase on the insurance for the marina because of, it seems like weather changes, hurricanes, tornadoes, other natural disasters. It's really hit the insurance industry. And so, when a hurricane hits Florida, as just happened, they have to recoup that, and everyone's insurance goes up. So I have a meeting this week with our insurance consultant to see what type of rates that he has for us on the marina.
It was an eye-opener to me the day that I came in to sign checks. And I signed a $50,000 check for liability insurance. Just liability.
Mm-hmm. we are looking at the possibility of Arkansas Municipal League, which our health insurance for our employees is through Arkansas Municipal League. But they also have liability, general liability insurance, they have property insurance for all of our buildings and the marina. And so that's another possibility that we're exploring.
Good.
Our deductible is still 25,000 on dwelling buildings, like when the rec center, that's not a good example, but let's say we had damage from wind today at this building, we still have to pay the first $25,000
Deductible.
deductible.
That sounds right. I mean, I don't want to misspeak. I would have to check that number, but that sounds right.
Are you going to legal fees? Are you going to talk about legal fees? Is that for Mr. Hutchison?
Yes, that's for Mr. Hutchison. It was 32,000. I believe that 42,000 number might be a little high. We will probably save some money on that because year 2 of that contract was supposed to go down. I think it was, I don't remember the numbers, but it was significantly higher in year 1 than in year 2. And that was based on the idea that a lot of these intractable issues that we were wrestling with and we needed his guidance could be resolved in the first year. And so it would require less of their time in year 2.
It seems that you're very pleased with our service we've gotten out of the firm.
Yes, they have been very good, very responsive. And we've been able to resolve every issue that we have placed in their lap. And they've been able to get it resolved.
Good. Thank you.
As well as the most recent win, I'll call it a win, our complaint that we filed with Carroll County about the taxation. We do have that resolved now.
Good. Thank you. Great.
Well, it's money I'd rather have there if we need it. We don't have to spend it, we're not going to.
Sure. Yeah, anything, if we've over budgeted, that's a good thing, because that money just goes back into the general fund. So, that's, as you said, that's a good thing. So any questions on general fund from the commissioners? Okay, can we move on to water? As you'll see, this is a big one.
Go back
Sure.
to general fund. I just want
Yeah.
everybody to look at that line, 700 property taxes. We pay HICID pays $55,000 a year in property taxes to the county.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think people are any more aware of that than the $50,000 liability check that I signed. So, yeah, thank you.
I don't know if everybody in the public knows that, Madam Chair, that we have been paying for years and years property tax on the property that HICID owns, paying to Carroll County. And it was supposed to be, according to the cases that Mr. Hutchison found case, we weren't supposed to pay that. And he proceeded with it with Danny, and we no longer have. So next year, hopefully that will be zero. But it's taken a while and a little bit of wrestling to get the county to agree to that. Is that right?
Well, a lot of that $55,000 that we pay is taxes on income producing properties like the marina and the
Oh, okay.
golf course. So it may not change appreciably.
Oh, okay.
That's true. So this is revenue, once again, at the top, you'll see at the top left there, it says income. So this is income to the water department, sale of assets. At the time we were doing this, we didn't know exactly how much revenue came from the surplus property auction. So that, as I said, that number's not in there. Water sales, a slight increase from 480 to 500,000. Water turn on, that's a fee. If you don't pay your water bill, they turn it off and you have to have it turned back on, then we have to send people out there for that, and there's a fee. Water service installation, sewer sales.
have a question, Danny, on emergencies for water over the weekend or overnight. There's a red light on all of the lift stations. I guess we've got 27 of them. And there's a sign there by the one that I passed by that says, call this number, I think it's 244. Would that be the water water department manager? If the red light is on, that means it's not pumping out, right? It's full, it's not pumping.
Yes, and sometimes that phone goes to the on-call person. It may not be the manager
Okay,
or
okay.
director.
And then they take turns at doing that on call. Okay, the other thing is if a resident has I go look out in my front yard and I've got it's boiling over all with water from a water pipe, and we come up and turn off that water, that's a fee to do that, right? If it's on the landowner's side of the meter.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And so we've got somebody on call all weekend to do things like that, is that right?
Yes, sir. There's always someone on call. So,
Can we just, and this is a little off topic,
sure.
but we're required by the to do a water rate assessment study, is that correct?
That's correct.
To see whether we're in line with other entities our size that are selling water. So that might, and I don't even know if that's going to even be completed in 2023, but
It probably will be. We are going to partner with a group called Communities Unlimited, and they are a state-funded group, and they will provide a water rate study for free. And we are on the list for 2023 to have that done. Now, assuming it doesn't get postponed or we don't get bumped further down the list, we should have that done in 2023. Although it's not required until 2026.
do you recall, are there requirements from the state as to whether we have to adjust our water rates? You know, if they're out of sync with everybody else? I don't remember. Do you recall?
I don't recall. So that's the revenue side. Scroll down, please, Cheryl. There is a lot that goes into water. You see basically no changes there, except I do ask the board to give an increase to Dan Schrader, who's our director over the water department. Dan is such a key part of running the water department, and he has every license that you can get from the state of Arkansas. It's, I believe they classify them in Arkansas as an A, B, C, and D. He has all of those water licenses. And also on the wastewater side, he has all of those certifications as well. And it is very rare to find someone like that and very difficult to hire. And he's not had a raise in 3 or 4 years. So I would like to give him it's a modest increase, but you can see overall the increase is $9,392. Scroll down, please. Chemicals. Like we're running pretty well on target there. Dues and fees. We have an employee at the water department that is going to get some additional licenses, and I think part of that is in the dues and fees as well. Engineering, that's generally what we pay ESI, and we're under the projected $20,000 for this year. Our hydrants.
Danny, we're
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're the ultraviolet system, I'll call it that. That's not in this budget right now in any form. Right, we have 5 years in which to do that. The treatment of the water.
I think it's only like 3 years to do that. And it's $750,000 And I'm not sure if that is listed under the CIP, but I know the board is all aware of that. And
Are we gonna try to do it, put a third, and do it? Or, you know, are we gonna try to space it out or do it right away? Or how are we gonna take some of the money from that $700,000 special fund or what?
I think we'll probably have to schedule a separate work session just to deal with that, because there are multiple options in how
Okay.
to work on that.
You could get a loan, possibly, small interest loan.
We've got
I can
reserves.
give you
We got reserves. That's what reserves are for. Boy, I know.
Yeah,
Ask me. I just used a bunch of them.
yeah.
I can give you the Reader's Digest version of what has transpired in the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
I've been working very closely with Jeff over at ESI. And Jeff, as you know, is representing us in this application process for the American Rescue Act money. We've been waiting a while on that. Well, during the first series of applications, we did not get approved because the money had been allocated towards things other than water and wastewater. Well, now they've reopened the application, and we'll be submitting that probably this week. However, they have changed the criteria. There is a requirement that we match whatever we get on that grant. And the match is based on your demographics and socioeconomics and your median income. Well, the median income in Holiday Island is like 46 to 48,000. That places us in a bracket that requires our match to be 25%. They also reduced the maximum from 7.5 million down to 5 million. But if we made a request for $5 million and we had to pay 25%, then our match is 1.25 million. And you really can't get a loan for that because they're not going to give you a grant and a loan. They want you to actually have skin in the game, so you've got to come up with 1.25 million. So I explained to Jeff that we don't have 1.25 million, and we began looking at what our needs were, what the total would be for the grant, and what we could, just by liquid capital that we have on hand, what can we put into it? And I believe that number is about $350,000. So the grant that he is preparing is 1.4 million. And what that would encompass is the UV treatment system, the rehab of well number 3 and well number 5, because those wells are so critical. I mean, that is our water source. And we know that well number 1 just went out, and well number 3 and well number 5 are essentially the same age. So that makes me a little nervous to know that those wells could go out at any time, and I think they need to be rehabbed. And there was something else in there. It was the UV treatment, it was the wells, and looking at the fire hydrants, some of those fire hydrants on 4-inch lines, and see if we can address some of that. So we came up with a number of 1.4 million.
These are all critical needs, so y'all please pray.
Oh, I remember the other one now was the PRV project, to replace all PRVs in the system. And when we added all of those things together, it was about 1.4 million and a $350,000 match on our part, which I think is doable.
Let's pray.
So that was our strategy for that federal grant.
But in answer to Mr. Stamp's comment, if we didn't have that 700 and some thousand special fund, we could take some out of reserves to meet that need. Because we're at about 41%.
No, we're at 35, which is the
We are
minimum.
right at the bottom of the threshold. So
Well, reserves are reserves. Now, that's what it's put back for, is for unforeseen contingencies. That's what a reserve is,
For emergencies, right.
for emergencies. It's not cash, it is not the gold bars. It is a reserve. It is money to be spent for unforeseen contingencies. The state of Arkansas, I believe, it's how it used to be, requires that you budget and then you add a 10% for contingencies. We, the board of directors here, decided that we needed a 35% reserve. And so that's what they put that reserve for, was for unforeseen. And it's just a reserve. It's not, like I say, it's not the Fort Knox.
Danny, the grants that you were mentioning, what's the timetable? What, while we're on that topic?
To be honest, I can't answer that question with any degree of certainty. I really don't know. I was told by Jeff that he's very confident that, that we have really good odds of receiving that money.
Oh, don't tell me that.
So
That's good news.
that's good news.
news.
Yeah, that would be wonderful if we could get those projects done.
So- Is this the money that has been transferred from the Department of Agriculture to the Department of Natural Resources now to administer and,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah, it was being overseen by Secretary of Agriculture, Wes Ward, and then now water and wastewater projects.
And I assume you're bird dogging our state representatives and
He is,
Edgar
he
Calaprod.
is working on it, yes, yes. Yeah, we appreciate his involvement and support. We could go through this real quickly. I don't see anything else there that jumps out at me. With the amount of equipment that they have and valves and pipes and vehicles and, there's just a lot to run in this water department, as you can see there. Can you scroll down just a little bit more, please? Down the telephone, uniforms, utilities, that's simply the, electric. And a large part of that is the bill that we pay to Carroll Electric to run the wells, because those are enormous pumps, enormous motors. I'm scared to think how many amps it takes to drive those pumps to run the wells, so.
Danny, I noticed on vehicle, we had 4,500 go down to 4,000. Was that possibly because we have several new vehicles, pickup trucks down there?
Well, and we adjust these numbers as we look at trends for this year. If it looks like we're coming under, then we typically lower the number for the upcoming year. And true, that is because we have some newer vehicles there.
And is there one employee who's a mechanic for both water and roads that takes care of all the equipment for both of those departments?
No, sir. And we had an employee who had those capabilities, and he was a very good mechanic. And he left about 6 months ago. That was James.
So who does the repairs now?
If we can do it in-house, we can do it. It depends on what it is. Something simple like, maintenance and batteries and spark plugs, we can do some of that. But, if it's too complex, then we take it out to a dealership. Okay, let's take a look at roads. Go to the top, please. Okay, the contribution income, that $23,000 there, the city passed a resolution when we conveyed State Line and Hawk Drive to the city, which was about 6%, I believe, of the roads. And so that number, $23,000, represents 6% of the roads department budget. And so that's the city's projected contribution to us for '23. Culvert installations, we do a few of those each year.
I'd heard from one employee that we used to charge, we got a independent contractor that put them in, but our personnel supervised it, but we are going to do them now. Is that?
That's correct, yes. We've had some problems in the past with builders. We were building a house and then they, you know, when they're putting in the driveway, they do the culvert and it just wasn't done right. You know, if you don't set the depth of the culvert appropriately, it's either going to fill up with gravel or it's going to back up, and it just has to be done right. And we have a new backhoe now, and we have some skilled people who know how to put these things in and do it right.
Do we have enough personnel that a home builder will be able to have that done in a fairly timely manner?
Yeah, yes, sir. And we only do about 4 or 5 a year, typically.
I'm surprised at the wage decrease, sir. Is that because they are missing an employee?
That's correct. That is, we have just not been able to stay full staffed at the roads department. And we advertise week after week after week. We've had an ongoing advertisement for position vacancies in the roads department for probably 4 months now. And we've had maybe 2 people who came in. And then it's just odd these days. It just seems like people don't want to work. I mean, you know, someone will come in for an interview and you hire them, and then on Monday they don't show up, or they work a week and then they don't come back, or it's just a strange time that we're in. We currently have 3 vacancies in the roads department. So Mike has really had a hard time. We had one gentleman that we hired about 4 months ago, and he was doing a great job. He's good with equipment, he's good on the tractor, good with mowing, he can do a lot of things, and then he got COVID. And it's been one of these really extended cases, and he's been out, and so we're trying to just stay ahead on things.
Danny, about 2 years ago, maybe a little more, we did, or say we, the district manager at the time had the municipal league do a study, salary study, wage study, and on most of our positions, we were at the midpoint, like all other districts our size, or cities our size, and some above, but I think in roads and water, that was the problem area, but if you don't have a copy of that, I think I have it still at home. But in other areas, we were at or above, so I was glad that we were there. But roads and maintenance and equipment operators is always a challenge.
Mm-hmm. I was looking at operations and maintenance under purchase services. I see a $31,000 decrease there, and I do not recall what was driving that. I'm sure there's a good reason for it. I do not remember what caused that decrease there.
Regular maintenance building, that's for the plant itself, the building,
Yes, the shop
It's
down there.
down to 0. We're probably not going to have to do anything.
No,
It's be $500.
That's $500. It's no increase in this
Oh,
year's
okay.
budget.
Okay.
They have some minor leaks on top of that building where they're at, and so that $500 was to just patch some of those leaks on the roof. Can you scroll down, please? We took out the radio maintenance. We just, they're not really using those radios. They're older radios. They're obsolete, and so they've just kind of dwindled to the point where we just don't use them, so we took that out. So that you can see the culvert installation expense on our side. We do go buy the culvert ourselves.
So the snow and ice control, they feel will be the same next year as it was this year?
Yes, sir. And he's already been working on that for the last month to get Chad and Sand and Brian.
I noticed lights, I didn't know we had that many street lights in Holiday Island. We have one on our street that a lady who lived there before, she's now passed, but she had Carroll Electric put one on, and I think it's $11 a month that the current owner has to pay for that light. It's the only one on our street, which is about a month. But is this for street lights at the front gate, or where do we have other lights? I'm not familiar with that.
You're correct, they're at the front gate there at Highway 23.
There's lights here on Woodside,
Oh, right here.
or Woodstown.
Okay.
And correct, the recreation center, I know, down at the country club, there's lights there in
Okay.
that parking lot around that building.
They might be in the parking lot, but not necessarily on the street of Holiday Island.
Correct.
Okay.
So there's, $44,000 of savings there in roads for this year. And, obviously that's the purpose of this, vetting through line by line. If we can find, $500 here and there, it adds up, yeah. Fire department, okay, so there's our income, the security fee, contributions, 833, which is state funds, and that's pretty consistent every year. Other income, thank you to our friends at the city for that contribution. And so pretty much even there. Scroll down, please. Wages, you'll see that wages is about $80,000 over what it was this current year, because it's a bit of a shell game, because if you hire a firefighter at $16, $17 an hour, and then you place him on a schedule that's $48.96, so that they work 2 days and then they're off for 4, and you do that for 14 days straight, there's built-in overtime there, and they end up working 100 and I don't want to misspeak, but it's well over 100 hours. And so there's a lot of built-in overtime there. And then if someone's off sick or training or whatever, then one of the other firefighters fills in and there's additional overtime. So now, you can see that's an roughly $80,000 increase, but that's without a COLA, and that's without adding personnel. We just simply went back and looked at the previous paydays for 2022, and we see the trend, and when you extrapolate that out to the end of this year, they're going to be right at $340,000 because of the built-in overtime that's in that schedule.
So is the overtime time and a half?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's time and a half.
I was a little confused when the chief came in and about his first month on the job, and we approved that plan. But with some of the other costs that the fire department incurred for tires and so forth, and making fire equipment all up to date and life-saving equipment, we spent a lot on the fire department this year. And with the great work the auxiliary does, are we looking at sort of a leveling off of the cost for the fire? No?
In terms of equipment, yes. In terms of personnel, no. In terms of equipment, I essentially told the chief, do whatever you need to do to get our fire apparatus in good working order and a good state of readiness. And so we've done brakes and tires and engine tune-ups and, you know, we just really put a lot into our equipment over the last 6 months or so. And, so I feel like we're in good shape there.
Well, with the money the city has contributed, thank you for that, and what we've spent on equipment upgrades and so forth, and then I'm not going to social media, but do we have the personnel that we need for 24-hour, that if I'll dial 911, I'm going to have a person come to my home?
We have 4 full-time people and they are scheduled in a manner so that there is someone on duty at all times.
Okay.
Now, there will be exceptions when someone's sick or injured or, you know, COVID or whatever, but under normal circumstances, yes, it will be staffed around the clock.
But let's say that person was homesick who was supposed to be on the 4896, and does the tone go to all the volunteers, or does it go to the chief's home, or what? How is that covered?
It does go to everyone, all the volunteers and the chief and the on-duty person. And we had an instance about 6 months ago where, you know, there was this rumor in the
Yeah,
community
yeah.
that someone didn't show up on a fire call.
Mm-hmm.
That was not the case. Someone did show up. We had someone who called in sick, and we had maybe a few minutes or an hour there where they were, you know, getting someone in to cover, but they did not miss any calls.
Okay.
And I verified that with the records.
Good. So in your opinion, as district manager supervising the fire chief, this budget you're proposing for 2023, we will have full fire services and full EMS services along with what Eureka Springs services with.
Yes. And I think we should be mindful that we have more paid staff at the fire department now than we've had in 50 years because thanks to this board, you added a full-time position for 2022.
Right.
And that position is still in this budget, of course.
Great, thank you very much.
And
Yes.
I really think that when somebody's ill, unable to cover their shift, typically they would go to a roster of part-time employees and pull somebody in,
Right.
like substitute teachers, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. I believe that's how it works.
That's correct. And we do have some people who are able to work part-time.
Okay.
And that was one of the requests that the chief made, is that we utilize those part-time people during peak call periods, which would be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from approximately 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. And because as they go back and look historically, those were our peak call periods. In order to do that, it's about another $30,000 to $35,000 to add that additional coverage in there. So that's, and we can see that when we get to, there's a tab here as we go across from left to right. There's a tab there specifically for salaries, and we could take a look at that.
And last question, thank you for all the information. The person who may interview for the replacement chief, are they going to be asked what they know about iOS and lowering or possibly lowering our insurance rates and so forth?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Yeah, I believe any chief with any level of experience is going to understand ISO rating. I mean, that's kind of Fire Chief 101.
Okay.
He should know about ISO ratings. So, just looking through to see if there's anything else. The miscellaneous, you know, that is a line item that our accountant really doesn't like because
It's not very explicit, is it?
it's not very explicit. It's not very transparent.
Bean counters don't like miscellaneous.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. So that's why you see a 0 in that column. And you'll see that under miscellaneous where she's just zeroed it out for 2023, indicating that we're gonna just take that line item out.
I think
I
that
mean, I
makes
think
sense.
every expenditure belongs somewhere, yeah, so.
That's why my wife doesn't let me have pocket change.
Yeah, that's your miscellaneous.
Not accountable.
Right. Personnel reimbursement, that is typically for, well, at times, we have a paid personnel who goes to, I don't know, Springdale. And they go to pick up supplies, or they go to training, or they whatever, we reimburse them for their time and their mileage. And it's also for volunteers
Oh,
who
okay.
show up on a call and they get
They get a check.
$8 or $10, to make a call, and we reimburse them.
7. I'd like to see it raised to 10, but it's 7.
We have far fewer volunteers now than what we had in a year ago.
Yeah.
So you can see that we calculated that, and we arrived at that number, 8,500, for the year 2023, because of a drastic reduction in the number of reimbursements that we've needed to pay out. We simply don't have many volunteers showing up on calls.
I think, Danny, I want to congratulate you in terms of the way you treat people and employees, but I think the new fire chief, one of the things that would be very important is how they discuss and interact with the volunteers and the full-time staff, as well as the auxiliary. I've had, as a commissioner, several comments from the auxiliary that they don't feel valued right now after the last year and a half or two, and they're very concerned about what the volunteer firefighters are allowed to do in terms of the white elephant sale, which is the way they make all their money. And so I think, when you've got a volunteer and they're being paid nothing, and they're raising thousands of dollars for our fire department, we need to recognize that and treat them respectfully. So that's a real hard thing to ascertain during an interview, but it can be done, and I would like to see improvement, because I think some of our members of the auxiliary are saying, yeah, I'm out of here because I don't feel valued at all, and it's just not worth it, and I hate to see that.
Well, I appreciate your comments, and you're exactly right. That nuance and those soft skills and those interpersonal skills are very, very important in a leadership role like a fire department, a fire chief. So that's really one of the primary things that I'll be looking for when I conduct these interviews. Yes. We go to,
One other question, I'm asking all kinds, but then I'll get my questions answered. The vehicle maintenance, that was the one that we used to have here before, and it was a lot of vehicle problems with it, and then we bought the chief a new vehicle, is that right? There was
that's correct.
It was like a Suburban or something out here. It used to be maybe district manager too, but the chief coming in, as well as the chief who left, had a new fire rescue vehicle, brand new.
Yes.
Okay. So there won't be a brand new vehicle. I hope we won't have a lot of repairs on it.
I think most all of those repairs on vehicles are going to be for some of our older fire apparatus that are still going to require quite a bit of maintenance. We've got most of it done, but they're just old.
Great.
Let's go to restaurant and meeting areas. As I said, this is the restaurant, the ballroom, the downstairs meeting rooms, all together, because they really are inseparable in terms of personnel, equipment, supplies, everything. It's all kind of wrapped up into one. Not much change there in revenue. Food sales is increasing, so we up that a little bit. Let's go down to wages.
I had a question on that. Our manager and our, what used to be called the golf pro, we have maintenance of the golf course, and that's Kyler, and we have Lauren. and they're both doing great jobs. But one of the comments we had at the last meeting, I think, is about how could we increase the income on several of our departments, but one of them being either restaurant or golf. And one of the ways to do that is tournaments. So I understand that Lauren was going to pursue a golf pro, and some folks don't feel that we need a golf professional like Barry Story was here in such a small course. But in terms of what are our expectations, maybe the board members and Danny, on this position? I know he's a wonderful cook, he's a wonderful supervisor, and he works really hard up there. I really enjoy working with him. But what are our expectations in terms of the comment that was made? How are we trying to get more income in to offset the cost of golf, both 9-hole and 18-hole? Is there anybody that...
Well, I would like to mention again, I think the board is aware of this, that we are bringing in a consultant who has a long history, like 30-plus years of managing golf courses and coming into golf courses that were struggling, and to be able to look at their business model and turn it around and make it profitable again. And he will be here next week, in fact. He'll be staying with us for about 5 days to evaluate all aspects of our golf operations, the restaurant, the clubhouse, the pro shop, the 9-hole and the 18-hole, as well as the golf maintenance and the way we're maintaining the grounds and all of that. So I think that's a good start.
I have a comment about that. I was chatting with Lauren. Our outside play has increased dramatically. That's what's keeping our golf course going.
Right.
Is, Golf Pass and the other online facilities. The condition of our golf course is wonderful. And paying for that pays off in getting people from all over the country who come here and are playing our golf course. We've got a nice pro shop where people are able to buy a lot of, spend money on things. The food is good. And our golf course is on the right track with outside play. And if this consultant can help us expand that, that's what we need.
Phyllis, I agree with you 100%, and also that's why I took a little bit of my time on the Fort Apache building a couple of weeks ago.
It looks
because
great.
when an outside player from Fayetteville comes and looked at that thing, it was just awful. But anyway, and it was maintaining the building so it wouldn't fall apart. But so I appreciate that, and I live near the golf course, a couple of homes away from it, and I see it very busy all the time, very busy. And I think we could find that out by the number of green fees, that are there. But one of the things, I'm glad you brought that up, because a couple of months ago we had a discussion about the restrooms at the pro shop, and that's where there are others that were remodeled up by the pub, by the ballroom, but the ones right by the pro shop are not too good. And what was the? I don't know what we did with that
They're
discussion.
supposed to come Saturday, or maybe
Are we talking about the ones in the hallway?
the
Yeah.
ballroom.
No.
Yeah, by the ballroom.
The ones right by the front, the door where you come in to pay your green fees is a small
Oh,
one.
okay, inside the pro shop
Yeah.
itself.
Oh, well, the one that's not working is at the ballroom.
Oh, yeah, but the other ones
The
were,
hallway there.
I
the ones that were
remember,
by
I
the pro
They
shop.
remember,
didn't tell me they were coming.
They were
Saturday.
supposed to be here. I don't know.
I've not spoken to Lauren today yet.
I remember the pro shop bathrooms renovation was requested last year, but we didn't have funding for it.
Okay.
So, and I'm sure they probably still need to be done.
Could something like that be added to our special fund? I don't know, we ought to call it something. But I think it really, I've been to a course in Fayetteville, not the most expensive, but it is really nice when you walk in. If you have to use the restroom, it is really nice. I can't say
Well, I
that.
think you would say that that is an issue with almost all of our amenities.
Yeah.
Is the eye appeal. They're all 50 years old, and they need some serious, making them attractive for people to come in. There's nothing wrong functionally with any of them, but they need upgrading.
But see, the dining room is fine, it's a little small, and the area where you pay your fees and so forth is fine. But if you have to use the restroom right there, it's not as good. I mean, it's not terrible, but it could be better.
You guys just need to clean up.
Ladies' room looks fine.
I'll stop at the porta potty.
You'll stop at porta potty.
So as you can see on that line 19, wages, it has increased by, what is that, 13,640. Lauren has had a really hard time keeping people there. You know, it's just, as I said before, it's just a sign of the times. And so he has added a couple of extra part-time people to kind of fill in the gaps, and that has, you know, that's led to an increase there. So as we get down to the salary page, that's something that we can take a look at, because he has gone over, out of necessity, he's gone over his authorized number of positions.
I wanted to thank him too, and I'll try not to talk so much the rest of the meeting, but Lauren has done a great job on a Friday and Saturday night preparing wonderful meals. A lot of people go up there that are single or married, but families, and they get, they either have them delivered, which is great, or they go up and pick them up. And it's just, I mean, it's increasing the revenue of the restaurant, and it's also providing wonderful service. And he's had that most weekends for a year or more, and it's really, especially during COVID and that period, so it's really a help to a lot of people who need it.
The advertising, just to point out that advertising does not include advertising for position vacancies. That advertising is for our, the golf course, if he runs a special, if he, you know, whatever. And we try to do a lot of advertising, especially in Eureka Springs and in this area. We tried doing some advertising in Branson, but it just didn't seem to draw the people over here. I guess because there's some tough competition, some really nice golf courses in the Branson area.
Big time.
Not that our golf courses are, you know, I think our golf courses are on par with what you see for the most part in the Branson area. I guess it's just the drive over here that keeps them in Branson. So must be a little bit of a bigger ticket item in there. Equipment purchases.
Utilities.
And utilities have just gone up across the
Cost
board.
of food is up 10.
Mhm. So, you can see that.
Inflationary costs.
Yep.
Danny, is it possible, Mr. Rock said while you were out about the out-of-district play and so forth, maybe at our next meeting, could you ask Lauren to summarize, or could you do it, what the green fees, and I think I could find it, but how have we looked from January 1 of 2022 to, let's say, October 1? What have the numbers on green fees are? You know.
Yes, sir. I have that information, not in front of me, but I have it on my desk.
Okay, maybe we could put that on, just, because I think it's looking good, but I'm not sure exactly. But I agree with Phil.
Okay. Yeah, if we get to a point to take a short break, I will go get that information for you.
Thanks.
Let's look at golf maintenance. Scroll over to the left. There you go. Thank you. So wages are down, and what we did this year, we were not able to hire the college interns. We just didn't have anyone available to hire for that position, but so we hired essentially the same thing, 2 seasonal workers who would have worked basically the same schedule as the interns would have worked. So not much to discuss there. Scroll down, please. Chemicals are up.
Any on our leased equipment, which we're going to just about 100% now.
Yes.
Is any of that, are repairs covered on any of those leases for the
They-
John Deere and so forth, the other equipment?
Yes, there is a warranty on that, and I think it's 1 year, I'm not sure, but, actually, I think on the last lease that we had on the Yamaha golf carts, they had a 3-year warranty where they would come and do the maintenance on them for 3 years.
Well, on the new
So-
lease club car, the fellow that repairs them lives in Holiday Island. So I was up there the other night and he said, where's something in his name? I said, I'm here, I live on Holiday Island, but I'm gonna fix a couple, it was before the big tournament. And so he got them all running by the tournament, Elks tournament, won. And so I think we're really lucky to have him live right here. And maybe he comes over at 5 o'clock and does a little repair.
You can see there, the accountant has made some changes under purchase services, which was $55,000. That included the golf cart lease. The golf cart lease will be moved down to the next line, which is leased equipment. And so the purchase services that you see still listed there are other items. You know, it could be pest control, it could be, let's see,
Tree trimming.
it could be tree trimming.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
I think we have a contract with someone that comes and gets our oil and that sort of thing too. So that's the change that you see there. I don't see anything else that's really. That leased equipment, that number is not populated there because we didn't readily have that number in front of us, but it is the new cart lease. Okay, let's go to Pro Shop. We'll try to scoot through the rest of these. Contributions, other income. So this is, once again, the revenue side of things, green fees. Looks like our green fees are up a little bit because we're projecting 120 for next year, so we're probably going to finish the year over the 112,590 that we projected.
Mhm.
Well, and you really have to add together that, the green fees, the family activity card, and the individual card,
Mhm.
to really figure out
Sure.
what that is. There's a good number for you, Ken.
Yeah, thank you. I bought several of us bought a punch card and just punch it every time we play. rather than-
Okay, you can scroll down, please.
I want to borrow money from Bob and buy a yearly pass next year.
So essentially that revenue is flat from year to year. Payroll portion up above. You can see that that's a part of that increase that I mentioned to you, that Lauren is just having a hard time filling the positions, and so he's kind of added people. So, and I understand we need to probably pare that down a little bit. We'll work on that. Merchandise has gone up. Can you go to the bottom line there under O&M? That's the same thing, leased equipment. We just moved the money around there from purchase services to leased equipment. So, okay, $22,000 decrease in O&M. So, go to rec center, please.
Well, when you put the 30,000 back in for carts, it's gonna even itself up.
No, that's true. Not a lot of changes there at all. I could just carry the numbers over just about. A few little changes. I saw one. Nope. Thought I saw something that changed. Okay, scroll down to wages. Do not recall what that increase is on wages. Most of our people down there are part-time. Even Janice is like at 30 hours a week, I think. So, oh, Kim.
Kim may be
is-
the only full-time employee down there.
She is. She's the only full-time employee down there. Okay, let's scroll down some more. You know, this is anyone's guess. If we build a new rec center, these numbers are going to change. Business is going to change. Purchase services is down, and I think that's, well, we had a little bit less this year because we had only one pool instead of two that we were maintaining. But it was a pretty good year at the rec center, for sure.
Did the $600 for the rental, the VRBO folks, did that affect us much? Is that a good?
It did. We only had maybe 4 or 5 of those that we sold.
Mhm.
But the opposite impact of that is that meant our own residents had better access to the pool
Yeah,
That's true.
than they did in the past.
I'll tell you another factor that probably had some effect on that. The motel up here, Mockingbird,
Mhm.
they have a pool.
Okay.
And they worked in agreement with several of these VRBO people to pay a fee and let them use their pool.
Ah,
So that probably changed it a little bit.
works for me.
Yeah.
Profit for the.
So, all right, let's go to the next one, is it ballroom? And that one, you know, you can see it's zeroed out because we combined ballroom as a meeting room along with the restaurant. So you can go to the next one, next tab. Safety, this is our sheriff deputy. It's essentially a wash. We collect 48,000 roughly.
And the 1,800 is the cost of the office up at,
Correct. That's the office over at the park.
We pay half and the city pays half.
That's correct, yes. That's cheap,
Mhm.
$150,
Yeah.
and the city pays $150 per month. So it's-
I went, Danny, I went to the city meeting last week, I think it was. I don't think it was brought up, but where are we in terms of a contract for both the city and the HICID for sheriff deputies? Is it going to wait till January 1, or are we going to ever see it, or what is the status on that?
I know that initially the city said, the county said that they wanted to wait until there was a new sheriff in office before they would finalize that contract.
Okay.
The quorum court has looked at it. They did not sign it. And they said it would only be a one-year agreement. And then after that, they wanted the city to find some other method, either by establishing their own police department or something.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit up in the air right now. I think the city council did approve it in one of their meetings, and now they're waiting on the county and HICID to make a decision on it.
And this board has already approved an interlocal agreement with the city if that were to go forward, did we?
No, this agreement that we're discussing is a three-way agreement that would involve us and the city and the county.
Okay.
And it would terminate the current agreement that we have
Okay.
with the county.
Our current agreement ends December 31 with corporate.
Which
Yes,
looks like that's going to be about the same time that the Court will decide to vote for it, so it's almost going to be back to
But-
January 1.
But the other confusion, maybe for the public to know, is that if there's going to be citations for anything from the city, they would have to go through Judge Ramsey's court, which is in Eureka Springs, and the other county, Madison, and that's all tied together in that, wouldn't it be?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Okay, what's the next tab over? Marina. Not bad. And there it is. So what we're showing here is under marina income, if every boat slip was filled at the marina, it's roughly $250,000. Per the new contract, we receive 80% of that, which is $200,000. And so that's why it's shown this way. And the miscellaneous, $14,000, is approximately 3% of gross sales of everything else at the marina. So that would be total income of $214,000. Now, if you'll scroll down, purchase services is $38,000, which is, I don't know why that number's there, because purchase services, I believe, should be 20% that we pay him. We're keeping 80%, we're paying him 20%. So I thought that number should be around $50,000. So we may have to go back and look at that, but that's what the purchase services is.
Because you may have to move the whole value of the slip fees to income and then show his 20% as an expense.
Well, his rent for the marina is 80% of what the boat slips are. So he has to pay us $200,000 in rent.
Okay.
So does that make sense? It's
Yeah, it
tied to
does.
the rent.
But
So
it doesn't look like your purchase services.
That's out there.
yeah, the purchase services, see, last year was $85,000, which was 37.5%.
Part of that may be the spider stuff.
But
That'd be purchase services.
That's what that is. It's $50,000, and then the $12,000 that we receive is paid back out to the exterminator.
is it $75 a slip? That the slip?
$75 a slip, yes, which is like 12. It was between 12 and 13,000, I believe. No other real changes. Oh, utilities. We show utilities as zero because the utilities are paid by KP Dock Services.
Madam Chair, I want to thank you for commissioners and also Danny. I was not able to make that special meeting where you signed a contract and chose the finalist, KP Dock Services, but the big, what I was so glad to see is that we had went from 37.5% of his fee to 20%. So there's a lot of money there. And I think you've done a good job of coming up with a win-win for the district as well as a win-win for the operator. That's our biggest other than the golf courses, I guess, and our buildings, but that's the biggest asset we have in Holiday Island. And I think you've got a contract that I was proud to see you sign and get going. And I think it can get better. And again, it comes back to getting more money in the district for different operations. So I think you've done very well on that. But
Thank you. Okay, let's go over one more. Campground, Danny Albright I've met with him 2 or 3 times in the last week as we were going through these numbers, and he's just done a great job down there, and he has such a good rapport with the campers. And it's a beautiful campground, it's a beautiful area, you can walk down to the lake, and obviously that's a selling point, but when you've got a guy with a personality like him, that's good marketing in itself. So people come back, if nothing else, just so they get to visit with him for a few days. Yeah. Purchase services down, and I don't remember the explanation on that. He's very frugal with his supplies, and when he doesn't ask for much down there. Now,
Well, it looks like what we've done
He
is
swaps
moved
it to management.
the purchase services and retitle it a management fee. That's his salary, I take it.
oh, that's correct, yeah, and you are exactly right.
Mhm.
And then we left the purchase services in there. And the 500, I do remember now, the $500 that was left in there for purchase services is for 3 or 4 trees
Mhm.
that have died, and they're rather large trees, and they're kind of encroaching on some of the campsites, and so that we don't have limbs or a whole tree falling on someone's RV, we're gonna get those removed, and that's, I think Eagle Rock Tree Service is gonna do that, so.
Tell you what, if you can get 3 large limbs taken down for $500, I need you to negotiate the next time I have to have a tree down.
There's also, you'll notice when we get to CIP, he does have a CIP request for the campground, and there it is, $20,000, and it has been at least 10 years since we have invested any improvements in the campground. And what this is gravel and rock, where some of the campsites are washing out, and so we'd come in and kind of dress it up with some fresh gravel, and I think that'd be a good improvement.
Danny, sure you wanted to go back to it, but on the marina, one of the other pluses I think that I saw in there was that your staff here at this building no longer has to bill and account for the slip fees, that KP Dock Services would do that.
Correct.
So that's going to be a savings, and you have the system where you can tell, and other purchase services that he sells, you got a clause in there about transparency.
Correct. He will provide us with a printout each month that has a detailed report of all sales.
For those of you who don't know, the previous manager, just a very fine guy, he did it from at home, and then he would bring the checks to and deposit it here in the building and so forth. But he and his wife did all the paperwork on it, and then we took it over here, which is a lot of work, and now it's going back to the vendor. It's good.
It's like we're ready to get to CIP. Let me make a suggestion that we take a 5-minute break
Okay.
before we start on CIP, and then go on from there. Does that work for people?
Good.
Mhm.
All right, let's do it. Yes, all of those campground worked.
Yeah, it's.
You come,
Yes.
at the courthouse, they look through that.
Yeah.
It's been a while there. Just get at the door. and it was on across the- They didn't clean it, but it's still attached.
Is that really? Did I?
Yeah, that green carpeting is all here. It's still,
Did you use a
I don't know what it is. It looks a little bit better, but it's still.
I never see
Look at
it.
this thing. If you were bringing somebody like that, I'd sell them.
Started out to be a runaway.
Would you take them?
Yeah.
You know what you need to do? Spend $200.
Oh my gosh.
There's been some more things. Of course, Arkansas
And then
got
he was-
destroyed by Alabama.
His prices are a little soft.
They almost, it was 28-0. And then Arkansas came back with 21 unanswered points. And then I think a field goal on top of that, and it was 24-28. And I thought, we could actually win this. And then Alabama just took off, and we never slowed them down after that.
Consultant.
You can get a good offer, but I didn't know.
Expensive.
$5,000. Which, in terms of the consulting world, very inexpensive.
In my mind, Al, the big difference here, what they have done in, was it
Oh, yeah.
2015,
Oh, sure.
15?
2015.
It was done by an association, and they looked at the operation and told you what was wrong, but they didn't ever give you any idea of how to fix it. You know, they just said, well, you don't hire the squirrel. And well, this guy, though, is a hands-on,
Sounds to me like
take a trouble horse and turn it around, that kind of guy.
keep kicking the can
And
down
I think
the
he's,
water system.
I'm hopeful that
Yeah.
what he's going to give us is going to be,
Yeah.
you know, the recipe.
The longer pick up a little bit, I hate that I end up paying more. Because prices are low, breakfast prices are low. Friday and Saturday nights are already work out. But you look at his breakfast price, and I don't want him to go to where the farmhouse was.
They're gonna raise all these fees.
Very nice.
$600 for paying these
Oh,
fees.
convenient. $9.49.
Oh, yeah.
Now, as mentioned, you can't go, you look at the carpet, you walk into the dining room, stand up and look at the carpet, and think, I mean, they did have it cleaned, so they had to clean something.
We need some money to replace it.
Yeah, that's what it makes me say. Look at it, and think, would you, gonna try to sell somebody a meeting before you take them there? And on his advertising, maybe, I think a lot of people don't realize that they can go, they think it's like a regular country club. They don't realize they can go, geez, he's promoting play, maybe.
Well, are we technically a country club or are we just a golf club?
Well, we're just a golf club.
Golf club.
And I would strongly recommend that someone would change his name.
Yeah,
Because
take it out,
that's a
because
term.
that implies,
Well, it's like the little building in the front entrance that we took down that first year. It keeps people from thinking, oh, should I go in there?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to see what it's about.
Yeah.
I don't.
So I think
We need to take, we need
it
to
should
call
just
it
be
a
called a
golf club.
golf club.
The 19th hole,
Thanks for considering.
open to the public.
Yes,
This is
yeah.
open to the public.
Yeah.
You paid your assessment, you're paying to eat here. I mean,
Yeah.
then you all heard that Connie Heaton passed away yesterday.
Oh, did she? No, I know she was close. Yeah, Jack's gonna be in this.
All right, we lost Ken, didn't we?
I think, he's signed up for hospice a few months ago. I think that helped.
It hasn't been that long, but yeah, a month or so ago. The last time she fell and hit her head. And